Right, well, by my watch, it's 7:30, so I shall formally kick off the evening and give a very, very warm welcome to all of you who have joined us from whichever corners of Sutton Coldfield and beyond that you're coming from. We've had talks earlier this month with people from Tennessee and Israel joining us, so I'm sure out there tonight there's probably someone dialing in from a very exotic location, and I don't mean Four Oaks when I say that. Zoe Toft, and I'm chair of a small charity called FOLIO Sutton Coldfield, and what we do is support the public libraries here in Sutton Coldfield. Now I want to get on to the really interesting people here tonight. So we've got Patrick. Patrick Hayes is a writer who lives and works here in the West Midlands. Many of you will know him, I think, from exciting evenings in Erdington. I was going to say, I don't know if that sounds funny. I think that's fairly true. He's been writing extensively for over 30 years in theatre, film, and radio, and he's won awards for a couple of his plays. His work's been seen at lots of important theatre venues in the West Midlands, including the Rep and the Belgrade, Midlands Arts Centre as well. And tonight he's here with us, and I'm really delighted, Patrick, that you're able to do this session for us. Colleagues to assist in telling stories this evening. So we have Bella Hamblin. Bella's been an actress for nearly 30 years and has appeared in television, radio and stage, and she also does voiceovers. And she's an experienced role player in both medical and corporate sectors. So she's helped train doctors and police officers in dealing with difficult people or unusual medical cases. And then along with Bella, we're joined by Amanda Vincent Perkins, and she's another professional actress. She's based in Worcestershire, so actually maybe that's the most exotic location this evening. I wonder, Worcestershire, do you think so, Amanda? And as well as acting, she loves tea, dogs, and exploring places. I feel a bit sad telling you that exploring places she's not been to before, and of course that's really difficult at the moment. So thank you for being with us tonight, all three of you. So we've got Patrick, we've got Bella and Amanda. They're going to tell us some tales yet to be told. Now, as you'll see on this screen, actually these ghostly tales are from Father Michael and Dr. Florence. So if I just move on, Patrick, who are these people? Do you want to tell us a bit?
Yeah, sure. First of all, thank you, Zoe, and good evening and everyone as well. And yeah, just brought me back to thinking of many exciting days in Erdington and nights in Erdington, which sometimes we didn't get home till dawn. So they were all good fun. Yeah, okay. The characters that you're seeing in front of them now is Father Michael and Dr. Florence. How all this came about was I have written other books on ghost stories before that you might know of, Ghost Stories of Sutton, Ghost Stories of Erdington. However, with this new book, after people had made contributions, local people had written in and sent in their contributions of their experiences, I wanted to make it a bit more like a novel, so it's more novel-esque. So I've created two characters, and Father Michael is an Irish Catholic priest, and Dr. Florence is a French medical doctor. And you might think, what are they doing in Sutton Coldfield or Erdington? Might sound a bit strange. Well, just to give you a little bit of background, Father Michael has come home from the missions, burnt out, has been very ill with malaria, and he was sent to the mother house in Brittany, France, where he had a very severe bout of malaria, and they called for the local doctor. Into stage left Dr. Florence, and they became friends. He was then sent to the West Midlands to look after a parish in the backwaters of the West Midlands while he recuperated. And Florence suggested to him as a form of therapy to help him get his mind and soul and body back, to start writing. And so he started writing ghost stories. Florence has come over for a holiday, and they're off, the two intrepid investigators, to find out the strange and spooky things that are going on in the Earlington and Sutton area. So the first story you're going to listen to tonight is an extract from what is called The House of 13 Gables. Here it is. Some of you might recognise it's changed slightly. It's reputedly the most haunted house in the West Midlands. It's got a strange name as well, the House of 13 Gables. And here it is. You'll probably recognise it now as Pipe's Hall, which is still there, sadly in not the best of states, based in Pipe's Park. So our story begins where Father Michael and Dr. Florence are inside the hall. They've been let in by the Polish caretaker, Alex, and their adventures are beginning, so to speak. So it's probably an appropriate time now to start the story. It's called The House of 13 Gables, and I hope you're going to enjoy it.
Florence apprehensively followed Father Michael into the gloom and semi-darkness of the house. They looked around and silently saw the dilapidation and decay, although the oak staircase still held its sheen and gave a defiant sense of pride to the abject state of this one-time fine manor house.
Come on, let's go upstairs. Florence, can we have some light, please?
Yes, of course.
She switched on the light on her phone and they began to clamber up the old staircase, making quite a noise on the bare boards as they went. They followed the beam of light which was their guide. The light lit up the bare, dull walls, a corridor full of shadows and dark doors that led to forgotten rooms. Eventually, they stopped outside one of them, and Father Michael turned the handle, which opened with the obligatory creak. They entered. He then walked across the room, stopping halfway, and beckoned Florence to follow him. They looked around. There was nothing except for a discarded desk and some papers. Father Michael then walked across the bare floorboards and stood by the bay window. Its small leaded glass panes gave shafts of bright light to the empty room that only held memories.
One evening, a night attendant was here in this room. She was quite alone. She was looking out when she happened to look across to the other bay window.
Father Michael ushered Florence to stand next to him and pointed to the adjacent window.
She noticed the figure of a woman wearing what she described as an old-fashioned yellow dress, and she was just staring out of the window. Then the woman's face slowly turned and looked towards the night attendant, her pale gaze fixed on her. She was terrified. Then, like the lady on the green, she disappeared. The attendant quickly went round to the room where she had seen the lady. The room was locked. She fumbled with the key and with a trembling hand entered.
And what did she see?
Nothing. There was no one there. Apparently, the poor old creature was so shocked by her experience that she never walked at Pipe's Hall again.
Besides sightings, has there been any other activity?
Oh, yeah. When the hall was a children's home.
A children's home? You didn't mention that before.
Well, I'm telling you now. And when it was a home, those who looked after the children had testified the servants' bells were heard ringing, and there hasn't been a servant in this house for years.
That's not strange. They could still work.
That would be a good explanation, but they had been disconnected for decades. Also, books have hurled themselves out of the bookcases, and plates and crockery were found smashed on the kitchen floor. There was the time when a carpet lifted itself off the ground, and the sound of a bunch of keys could be heard being thrown across the room.
Florence looked around the room.
Perhaps someone was angry,
She said with a degree of perplexity.
Now, you would think so, wouldn't you? However, those that worked here said that despite all the goings on, they were fascinated by the hall and even felt as if they were drawn to the building.
I wonder what they would think of it now, in such a terrible state.
I know, God knows. Let's get on. There's a lot to see.
They left the room where the night attendant had the experience and walked along the dimly lit corridor. Florence stopped outside a room. She saw a thread of light between the floor and the door.
What is in here?
I haven't a clue.
I think there is someone in there. I can hear something.
Father Michael moved a little closer, and they both heard the faint sound of movement, like dress rustling on the floor. Florence gently tapped at the door. Nothing but silence. She slowly turned the handle and entered the room, leaving Father Michael outside. A few seconds passed, and then he heard a scream coming from the room. He rushed in.
What is it?
I'm not sure. Something seemed to attack me.
Attack you?
Father Michael looked around the room.
But there's no one here.
Well, whatever it was, it went into my face.
Father Michael surveyed the room and then gave a light laugh.
I think I know who the culprit is.
What?
The little fella over there.
He walked over to the window towards a pigeon that was sitting silently on the ledge. Florence gave a smile of relief.
Come on, let's be having you.
Father Michael gently picked up the bird and opened the window, and after a few encouraging words, the creature flew to its freedom.
Sorry, Father.
No, not at all. They can be a great nuisance, so they can.
Florence looked at the ceiling and noticed that the strip light wasn't on. She walked to the switch by the door and flicked it up and down, but no light came on.
That's strange.
What is?
The light. I thought I saw a light, but it doesn't work.
It could be the sunlight. I know, rare as it is in England.
Yes, it must be a mistake.
Florence continued to survey the room. There was an old iron bed without a mattress, a 1970s yet scruffy white vinyl medical cupboard that hung from the 17th century walls. It still had the sign of a green cross on a white background, denoting its purpose.
Was this a hospital or something?
Not quite, but I think it must have been the sick bay.
The sick bay?
The infirmary?
Oh, I understand.
No, must be the place where the children came in, when they were ill. Matron, whoever would come in and look after them.
Florence imagined children under tightly folded sheets, wearing thick pajamas. She remembered when she was ill as a child. The days would be long as she lay in bed. She would hear other children's voices in the distance until the sun began to fade. Mother would come in with soup and bread, sit on her bed and smile. If she had ever had a fever, Mother would welk a welcoming cold flannel on her forehead and face. Then the shadows of the evening became longer and the world stiller. Mother would come and say good night, tucking her comfortably in bed, then holding her and kissing her gently before saying, "Dors bien avec l'ange, ma chérie." Did the children in this room ever know love like that? Her journey to the past was broken when Father Michael began to speak.
Children in the sick room would often say the next day to the nurse who was on duty, "Thank you." And the nurse would reply, "What for?" The girl or boy would say that during the night, the nurse had come into the room and mopped their fevered brow and tucked them gently into bed. The nurse would look confused and say, "But I didn't come in." This happened on more than one occasion, and soon she was known as the Grey Lady.
Father Michael paused and said,
"Florence, are you all right?"
After a few moments of hesitation, Florence stumbled with an answer.
Yes, fine, thanks.
Sure.
Sure.
Okay, let's move on.
Where are we going now?
I want to show you something.
They left the small infirmary, and when closing the door, Florence gave a glance at the empty room, imagining a lady in the shadows bringing tender comfort to those young children. With a strong beam of torchlight, they clambered once more along the Jacobean passageways and past a plethora of abandoned rooms in the semi-darkness until they reached the end of the corridor and came to another room. They entered the room and, like before, spent some moments looking around, scanning the walls and ceilings with a hope a discovery would be made.
Now, tell me, what do you see?
It's an empty room.
Any particular features?
Florence looked around.
In the corner there is a fireplace.
And?
It is boarded up. Where is this leading to, Father?
The most fascinating stories were told to me by Roger, a teacher who worked at the hall. He had 3 distinct experiences.
Go on.
Well, one Sunday night, he returned late from an outward bound trip with a group of young people. As was the routine, Roger goes into the hall and opens up the cellar of the house, ready to store a variety of equipment. He has to go through the cellar first in order to open some shutters, which only could be opened from the inside to the van parked outside. Years ago, it was used for such deliveries as coal and wine and beer. As the cellar has no access to natural light, he switched on all the lights possible. This meant opening 2 interior wooden doors and partitioned off part of the cellar. Are you with me, Florence?
I think so.
So imagine a Roger alone in the dark cellar. He's opened the coal shutters and is going back. He's only gone a few yards when suddenly he hears the shutters slam shut.
Father Michael thumped the fireplace in front of him, which made Florence jump.
Seconds later, Roger can hear one of the partition doors being closed. He's now standing in virtual darkness. Then with a racing heart, he can hear the other door halfway down the cellar's narrow corridor slam shut.
Father Michael banged the fireplace once more.
As Roger stands there shocked and frightened in the half light of the cold, dank cellar, he hears footsteps.
Father Michael began to walk on the spot, exaggerating the sound of his feet on the bare floorboards.
The footsteps walk along the stone floor, up the steps to the main cellar door. And to Roger's horror, he hears the door close. Like a fox on the run, he dashes along the dark corridor and up the stone steps. He looks and sees that the cellar door is firmly closed. For a fleeting moment, he imagines being stranded, alone in the cellar with no chance of escape. However, with a trembling hand, he turns the handle of the cellar door and with a firm push, finds to his immense relief that it opens. It was closed, but not locked. He then begins shouting out, calling out to see if anyone was in the house. No one answers. He goes to the front door and looks out into the car park. It is empty, except for the minibus standing alone on the tarmac. Bravely, he re-enters the cellar and switches off the light, making sure the door is firmly wedged open. After composing himself, he tried to explain away what had just happened. He thought maybe a gust of wind from outside, blowing down the cellar steps, might have been responsible. But this was impossible. It was a calm, still summer's evening, with not even a breeze. Most strangely, the partition doors in the cellar were built on a slope, and to be closed, they'd have to be pushed quite strongly. To close on their own would defy the laws of gravity. Also, he had wedged open the middle door of the cellar. Someone would have needed to have removed it for it to close. But who?
Father Michael paused, but not waiting for Florence to give a response, continued with the story.
There was another time, one Sunday night, Roger coming back late from another trip, and thinking it was too late to make a 60-mile journey home, decided to stay the night.
Was he on his own?
He was.
Oh, brave man.
He had a room in the east wing, and around midnight, he decided to settle down for the night. A wet, windy night it was too. He read for a while and then slowly began to drift off to sleep. He was only asleep some moments when something woke him. He sat up in the bed. What was it that made him wake? Was it the wind rattling the old window frames or the sound of the rain striking the glass? No, it was the faint sound of footsteps coming from the other side of the house. Only an echo at first, but then the footsteps, unhurried and slow, came closer to Roger's room. Nearer they got, and Roger sat up in the bed. Well, he can hear them clearly now, getting closer and closer. What should he do? Get up? Investigate? What if it's a burglar? Unsure, he stayed in the bed. Then the footsteps suddenly stop outside the room. Silence. He can only hear the breath coming from himself and the sound of his pounding heart. He stared at the door handle, waiting for it to be turned, not knowing what sight would befall him. There was complete silence. The handle stayed still. Then after some seconds, the footsteps began to move and continued into the next room, the very room that we're standing in.
Father Michael paused and then looked at the door, and as he spoke, his eyes moved towards the fireplace.
The footsteps, still slow, continue across the wooden floor. Roger hears a series of strange sounds. He's perplexed as well as scared. If it's a raider, what would they be doing? Surely there's nothing to steal. He listened again, and it sounds like as if someone is scraping metal on metal. At first, he's unsure of what's going on. And after more scraping sounds, he recognizes what they are. They are sounds from a long time ago.
And what were they?
They were the sounds of someone raking out a coal fire.
Raking?
Yes, it's like cleaning out the fire.
Father Michael mimed a demonstration.
Oh, I see.
But as we see,
He gestured to the fireplace.
it's boarded up and has been for some time.
Meaning,
Something to do with time.
do you mean when time, how do you call it, slips?
Exactement. He's certain that he heard a fire being raked, yet that was impossible. Also, along with the fireplace, Roger was certain that the footsteps that he heard outside his room were that of a woman, suggesting...
Suggesting what?
Well, many years ago, in rich households, there were servants, and one was a scullery maid, and one of her duties was to clean out the ashes from the fire. So, what was it that Roger heard? Was it some form of time lapse, an echo from another age? And Roger also insisted that the steps, they sounded as though they were walking on a wooden floor.
And?
When the incident took place, the corridor had carpet on it.
And he was sure of this?
Oh, yeah. Also, he heard them coming from the other end of the building. But what he didn't hear was the opening or closing of the two fire doors that lay in between.
So you are thinking that there is some overlap in time, that the energy that was there then is here now?
Mm-hmm. It's possible that Roger experienced two worlds coming into contact with each other, as if time has no physical barriers, allowing the past and the present, even if only momentarily, to brush against each other. Why else the footsteps on the wooden floors when there's carpet, huh? The raking of ashes in the fireplace, which hasn't been used for years.
And what did Roger think?
Roger thought it was possible that a family from the past carried on regardless, as if nothing had changed, and that their world, despite the fax machines and computers that were installed in the house, carried on oblivious.
And that explains the poltergeist activity, the keys being thrown, for example. And didn't you say this place was used by young people? The Outward Bounds. Was this room used for anything?
Yes, it was a classroom.
Florence gave a knowing look and smiled.
I know what you're thinking. Poltergeist activity and young people. But the activity happened mainly when all the young people had gone. And although there had been poltergeist activity, everyone interviewed thought the hall to be a pleasant place. And if there is any spirit here...
Father Michael looked at the fireplace and then at the door.
He may be sad, but certainly not vindictive or vengeful.
Moments later, they left the hall behind them. Florence put her hand out and felt drops of rain.
It is raining.
We better get back to the car.
They began to move off to the car as the rain quickly poured down. They hurried past the house. Florence stopped abruptly. She looked up at the row of leaded windows. She focused on the window where the infirmary used to be. An old torn curtain is blowing in the wind.
That's strange.
What is?
The room we were in. The infirmary. I thought that you closed the window after you let the bird out.
I did.
Father?
Yes?
I think that there is someone there in the room.
That's probably Alexander doing the rounds. Oh, come on, we'll get soaked.
The bad-tempered rain began to pour down faster and with a fury as it struck the land.
The rain is awful fierce.
Father Michael gestured to the car park. Florence began to follow the hurried footsteps of Father Michael. She then stopped, turned around once more to look at the hall, and noticed that the window was shut.
Will you come on, Florence?
They ran to the car and clambered in, catching their breath. The rain slowly eased. As they adjusted to the dryness, Father Michael pressed a button and the car window opened. A man wearing an anorak walked close by. Florence strained to look through the window to see Alexander.
Been shopping?
Florence looked at the smiling figure of Alexander, who held up a couple of little shopping bags.
Well, that's the end of the first excerpt that Patrick and Bella and Amanda have prepared for us. And I'm really hoping that members of our audience now, next time they're in Pipehays Park, are going to walk past that building and imagine those characters and look for the windows blowing open and the pesky pigeons and maybe spot a ghost or two themselves. Now, Patrick, Bella and Amanda have one more story for us, which I'm just going to try and bring up some images so that you can see where that's set. Let's try this. It's not wanting to play. Sorry, I can't get that up, but Bella, maybe you can tell us a little bit about where the next story is set.
Okay,
Sorry, the images they're not working for me to come up at the moment.
Okay.
I'll leave you to set the scene.
So
but
the next
another place that lots of people in the audience will know, I think.
Yes, I think it will. So the next chapter we're going to read to you is chapter 7, and it's called Ghostly Centurions. So it is set in Sutton Park, and some of the images that you would have seen was the marker, the triangle marker for the Roman road, which all of you may have seen, and also the Roman road that's running through. So I want you to imagine this when you're hearing this story. And this story was sent in by a local resident called Kevin Hyatt about his experiences in the park. And then it became a further adventure for Father Michael and Dr. Florence. Chapter 7, Ghostly Centurions. Florence and Father Michael walked along a narrow path in a wood called a wood in Sutton Park, a nature reserve northeast of Birmingham. The sun shone through the trees and leaves shivered slightly in the autumn breeze. This country park was once a chase, where the hunting of deer took place. The park has many complexions composing of woods, lake, and stretches of open land where heather and gorse grow. Florence momentarily stopped. Her eyes followed the carpet of leaves that led a trail to what seemed like a dense woodland.
Are you sure we are going the right way?
Oh, yeah, quite sure. We're nearly there.
Father Michael caught up with her, slightly out of breath.
But it is going to the wood.
Have faith, Florence, have faith.
Florence followed Father Michael along a narrow path, and they both welcomed the open space when they emerged into the bright green park.
Just a little further.
With a Gallic shrug, she followed Father Michael. In a matter of moments, they came across a triangularly shaped steel object on the ground.
Here it is.
Father Michael shook a finger at it.
It is like something from outer space. I thought you said we were going to see a Roman road.
We are, and this is it.
He pointed across the undulating gorse and heather to a sandy track.
That is a Roman road.
Yes.
The priest's face lit up with confidence.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Father Michael read the information contained in the embossed words.
This is the marker. It says that we're in the right place. Thanks be to God.
Okay, that's good.
Come on, let's have a closer look.
Striding up the slope, they came to a sandy-coloured track. He gestured at the path.
Now, this is where you need to employ the imagination.
I'm trying.
Stay still.
What is it?
Florence quickly moved closer to him, scanning the area.
Not a snake, is it?
There are no snakes.
What is it then?
I just want you to close your eyes and be still.
Pourquoi?
Close your eyes and listen.
The silence was only broken by the autumn breeze, which rippled the tops of ferns and heather.
Hear the voices from the past, the echoes of a different time, a different world. Let's go back many, many years and let the story begin.
Florence kept her eyes closed as Father Michael continued to tell the tale.
As you know, I was sent to testimony by a local resident, Kevin Hyatt, who was a keen horse rider.
Florence opened one eye slightly.
Yes, I remember.
He wrote that many years ago in the early 1970s, he used to ride out with the Streatley School of Equitation, a riding school which was in Manor Road, Streatley. The school was run by a certain Lieutenant Colonel Leach. It was late in October on a Sunday between 3 and 4 p.m.
He paused, letting his words create the scene for Florence.
There were about 8 of them on the ride, and Kevin was leader. It was a terrible drizzly day. They were returning down the old Roman road, more or less where we are now. In the irritating afternoon rain, he noticed a group of riders were coming in the opposite direction towards him.
Tension quickened his pace of delivery.
At first he thought it was the Bourneville riding team, a local team, as they used to take rides in the park as well. As they approached, they acknowledged each other by a raised hand. Kevin didn't notice anything unusual at the time. However, the rest of his riding companions had become very quiet. He asked them what the matter was.
Florence opened her eyes as he paused.
And?
The answer they gave him put him in a state altogether. Members of the group were not just quiet, but in a state of shock. They said the horses that they had just passed were trotting approximately 12 inches above the ground.
Florence waited, thought, taking in what Father Michael had just said.
And more than one person definitely saw this?
Oh, yeah. I mean, with the rain, it was possible you could miss it, but quite a few of them didn't.
And was there anything else, like clothing, for example?
At the time, they didn't notice that much difference in the clothing of the riders. They were probably wearing cloaks. But Kevin's band were convinced that this powerful group rode in thin air.
Allure, what happened next?
Well, a few days after, they told of their strange encounter to the official at the local museum. Your man gave him a mighty shock. He said these otherworldly riders, dressed as they did, were from Roman times.
Oh, so they were legionnaires.
Exactement, mon ami.
Florence surveyed the scene and imagined Roman soldiers on horseback cantering down this ancient road.
Now, not only did they see the soldiers, they greeted each other as if they were in the same time.
I wonder why October?
We have no idea. Maybe that particular legion was on the move before the winter set in.
I have heard similar stories in France. In the south, where there was once a road or aqueduct, and the Roman soldiers have been seen walking apparently in thin air.
And the explanation?
Oh, the main thought is that during Roman times, the road was higher and for some reason has been eroded over time.
Yes, there have been similar sightings in York of Roman soldiers where only half the legs are seen on, as the ground has been built over the years, like, you know.
Interesting.
And your personal belief?
Oh, I don't know. As a doctor, a scientist, I must look at empirical evidence.
Like a true child of the Enlightenment.
I believe what people see is true for them, but what the reality is may be something different.
Truth. What is that?
Pontius Pilate.
Good to know you haven't forgotten your scripture, Florence. So, do you think it could be their imagination?
Sometimes it happens, but not all the time.
Florence glanced further up the path to where the Roman legionnaires once rode.
And does Kevin say anything more about the soldiers?
No, but his strange tales don't end there. There was another incident which Kevin describes as peculiar.
Florence took a step closer.
Go on.
Well, he often rode an ex-Ministry of Defence horse in the park. He could be riding along a path and suddenly Patrick, that's the name of the horse, would suddenly stop and, stubborn as a donkey, would not go on. He refused to pass a certain place, making Kevin find another route. If Kevin came back the same way, Patrick would again refuse to pass the same spot. He would also neigh when...
Nay.
Yes, the sound a horse makes, and no, I won't attempt an impersonation. Now, where was I? Ah, yes. At the time, Kevin thought Patrick was being awkward, but he later mentioned it to a close friend who had carried out research on the history of the park. The friend was intrigued and asked him to show the areas on the map where Patrick either refused to pass or neigh in distress.
And did he discover anything?
Oh, yeah. According to his friend, and much to Kevin's horror, he was told that those areas were where people had died.
Mon Dieu!
She raised her hands to her mouth.
Many people died here in Sutton Park.
It's much more worrying than that, Florence. One of the stories Kevin was told suggested not only whether the sites where people have died, but these people were victims of unsolved murders.
Oh, mon Dieu! Just when I was getting to like this park.
Don't worry, Florence, there's still lots of research to be done.
Florence put out a hand and felt droplets of rain.
Ah, il pleut.
Oh, I'm not going to lift the umbrella in the car.
Father Michael glanced at his old wind-up watch.
Yeah. Oh, well, by the time we had a cup of tea.
You and your tea, Father.
It's either that or I'll take to the drink. Now, come on. I know a place where we can get some lovely Victorian sponge cake.
Florence put her arm through Father Michael's, and with heads bowed to stop the rain getting into their faces, they walked on. The wind blew and leaves fell from the trees and drifted across the now deserted ancient path.
Thank you very much, Patrick, Bella and Amanda, again bringing to life another place that we all know and love, although we might get a shiver down our spine next time we're walking along the Roman road. So if anyone's got any questions that they would like to put to Patrick, Bella or Amanda, please feel free to use the question and answer function. I certainly wanted to ask a question, Patrick, about the source for these stories and other ones that I know that you've written about. You mentioned, in fact, you put the character into your story in that recent one. Could you give us a little bit of background about where you get your stories from?
Yeah, well, for the ghost stories, it's basically local people or people who have connections with the area right in. Normally, it started through, just putting a little feature in what is now the defunct Sutton Observer, also a bit on social media, hearsay as well, or friends of friends. So that's how people started to write in their stories, which were then collated. So all the stories that are in the book are all based on people's true experiences. And I think that's important to point that out. They're not made up. Not one is made up.
So there's stories that people have told you that they experienced some kernel of what you've then adapted into your
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I don't know if you're going to be able to answer this, but Eileen has asked, if we read your new book, do we find out if there really is a ghost in Pipe Hayes Hall?
Well, I think you have to weigh up the evidence. There are certainly strange things going on down there. So yeah, you might have to go and have a look for yourself.
And then we've got another question from Elizabeth. Do any of you, Patrick, Bella, or Amanda, have any of your own real life spooky experiences to share? Not you, Amanda. Bella, no?
No, I've nothing, I'm afraid. No, I don't think I'm wired that way. I don't see those things. Maybe I don't want to see them.
I think perhaps maybe very quickly, the only thing that I sort of spooked me a little bit was a few years ago I was doing some filming in an old part of somewhere on the University Birmingham campus, and I remember I went down to the toilets They were kind of, you had to go, they were almost like cellar toilets. You had to go down a few flights of stairs to get to them. And I remember it was quite late in the evening, and I went in and I was in a cubicle, and I heard I thought I heard somebody come through the door, walk up to the cubicle where I was and go in the very end cubicle next to me and shut the door. And so you just kind of think, oh, you know, somebody's come in, gone to the toilet. And when I came out, I flushed the loo, came out, looked, I just happened to glance back at the corner, and that cubicle was open. And that was very bizarre. Yeah.
Was it Moaning Myrtle,
I
perhaps?
don't know, but I have to say it did spook me, and I'm not, I don't like to admit this, but I didn't bother washing my hands. I just sort of ran very quickly.
Wouldn't be allowed nowadays. You have to wash your hands for 20 seconds.
I know. had some antibacterial wipes on me though in my bag, so when I got back upstairs, I wiped my hands that way. But it just, I really thought I heard somebody come in and walk past my cubicle and shut the door in the one next to me.
Well, what about you, Patrick? Have you got any spooky experiences that you've personally had?
Well, I don't know about spooky. I mean, it's more things that are more like dreams and premonitions. Really, tends to be tend to be more in that way. I might, for example, dream of Brittany in France or something, wake up, come downstairs, and there's a letter on the table from Brittany, France. It's more things like that, really. Yeah, lots of sort of like supernatural experiences. Yeah,
the coincidences there that might
be interpreted as such. Yeah.
So can I also ask, of all the stories that you've been told about ghosts in and around Sutton,
yeah,
is there a location that's more haunted than others, where you get told more often, or people have had ghostly experiences?
Well, interestingly, it's the park, Sutton Park. There's quite a lot of stories, emanating from the park, and most of them involving horses. Which is quite interesting, because we just heard the one about the Centurions in the first book. I did ghost stories of Sutton Coldfield. It was a couple, a mum and a daughter, out walking the dogs, one by Rowton Well, and they heard a horse behind them and thought, well, nothing unusual about a horse in Sutton Park, and they thought, hang on a minute, this horse is getting a bit close. And the mum, using her natural instincts, pushed the daughter actually on the ground, expecting this horse to come thundering by, and there was nobody there, or nothing there. And then just outside on the town gate, a friend of mine who was a postman at the time was driving to work and slammed his brakes on because a horse and carriage went straight past him.
So with a carriage as well?
Yeah. So it's for some reason, and there's tales also of Black Root as well. So yeah, that, and probably building wise, I would probably say Newhall.
Well, it's got the age to have a lot of ghosts, I would have thought.
Yeah, it's had long enough, hasn't it?
Fantastic. So the stories we've heard this evening are featured in your new book that's out very soon, Tales Yet to Be Told. Due to the pandemic, it's not quite made it to bookshelves yet, but if people want to keep in touch with you or buy a copy when it comes out, the best way to do that is to go via your website or to email you. And what I'll do is I'll put those details in a follow-up email that will go out tomorrow to everyone who's attended today, so that if you would like to get a copy or find out more about Patrick and his other books, then you'll have all the details that you've got. We've just got one more question that's come through. So, two more questions. So Eileen said, what made you choose a Catholic priest as your main character?
Believe it or not, I'm Irish and Catholic. Is one reason. Don't be fooled by the accent. I think to go right back to being a writer as well, and especially on the ghost stories. The reason I started writing ghost stories, because I remember many years ago as a young child listening to my mum and my aunties who came from Galway, telling stories, really, really gripping, memorable ghostly tales from the west of Ireland. So that's what kicked it off as well. And so I just thought it'd be nice to have, to evolve into this character, Irish mists and Celtic sunsets and things, and it's also very much part of my background and my culture as well.
Okay, so from that we lead nicely into John has put a question which was about why the Irish priest, but also why a French doctor. Now I'm wondering, given that you've talked about having premonitions about letters from Brittany, whether there must be a real life French connection. And that's
really.
Okay, so maybe you can share a little of that with us.
Yeah, okay, because my spiritual home, as well as the west of Ireland, has become Brittany in France, and so I'm a big Francophile. So yeah, my love for Brittany and France. So I just thought it'd be quite nice to have a French character as well, and that's where that's evolved. And I thought it'd be quite nice having this Irish and French mix, which historically has links and has gone back for many years as well. And for those who know Brittany, it's also quite Celtic as well. So it's not, it's not, in some ways, not like the rest of France. So it made links between France and Ireland. I just thought they make a good mix. And she's supposed to be a child of the Enlightenment, very rational, which the French tend to be, and with an Irish Catholic priest who's more into the faith. And it's about that sort of like having a bit of a duel as well, or intercrossing as well. I could say it's because I like French women, but my wife would give me a slap, so I'll stop there.
So there's sort of real life roots for those two characters, and then I'm wondering what the roots are for how come you've ended up with Bella and Amanda as your your partnership in this in performing. How did you meet, and how has it evolved that Bella and Amanda are now telling these stories?
Yeah. Okay. Well, Bella's been looking after me since 1989.
I don't look old enough, obviously.
I've known Bella since 1989 when we worked on the community drama projects together, and she's one of my dearest and closest friends. And on a professional level as well, we've worked a lot together. My last play that was put on in Birmingham, Bella produced it, and she also edits my Napoleon videos, which are on YouTube. So we have a working relationship and a personal relationship. And I probably bamboozled her, twisted her arm to do this, when she could probably be earning lots of money doing wonderful things like the Archers. But there you go, eh? Amanda,
because we could go off down that rabbit hole again.
Yeah, no, might go down the Archers tonight. And then Amanda, which was a bit spooky, I met her at the medical school where I used to work in Birmingham, and they have role players and they use actors. And I thought, Amanda's one of the doctors that we're going to be working together. And it turned out that she wasn't a doctor. She's a actress, but I thought she looked like a professional doctor. And also, she's got that European look. Yes, it was fulfilling one of my fantasies yet again. So I roped in Amanda, and she's experienced the delights of Erdington ever since, haven't you, Amanda? So.
Well,
an enjoyable experience.
Absolutely. Well, it's been an enjoyable experience very much having the three of you this evening telling us stories as we head off to bed in a little bit. It's been a while since I've had a bedtime story, so I'm very grateful, even if they were a bit spooky, and even if they will make me think twice when I'm next in Pipe Hayes Park and walking the Roman Road. So thank you very much to all of you who've joined us this evening. I can hear you all giving our actors and writers a round of applause, and thank you very much for joining us. As I say, when you leave this evening, please do complete the quick survey. It will only take you a couple of minutes at most. And so it remains for me to thank once again Patrick, Bella and Amanda, and Liz in the background for helping me. And I wish you all a good night, and I hope you all stay safe and stay well, and hope to see you all at another event in the future. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. God bless now. Take care.
Bye-bye.